All right, welcome back. In any field of research, your work is always built on what came before. It stands on the shoulders of giants, as they say. But let's be real, how do you actually make sense of everything that's already been published? That's what we're tackling today. We're going to talk about how to take your literature review from just, a boring summary of papers and turn it into a powerful, compelling argument for your own research.
Okay, let me throw a number at you that's, it's pretty much impossible to wrap your head around. 1.8 zettabytes. Yeah, that's how much data was created in just 1 year a little while back. To even try and put that into perspective, that's enough info to fill over 700 trillion pages of text. Seriously, this is the massive, churning ocean of information that every single researcher has to try and navigate.
Which, brings us to our first huge challenge. How on earth do you keep from drowning in all that data? For a long, long time, the way people approached this was, frankly, a mess. It was chaotic, kind of unscientific. So let's take a look at the old way, and then the right way.
Okay, so think of it as a tale of two reviews. Over here on one side, you've got the old school way, the subjective or narrative review. What was the search strategy? Well, it was often biased, maybe incomplete. And how are studies selected? Pretty much based on whatever the researcher happened to find first, or maybe what they already liked. And quality? A truly groundbreaking study might get the same attention as a really flawed one. It's just not rigorous. But then, on the other side, we have the hero of our story, the systematic literature review. This is a whole different beast. It's explicit, it's justified, it's all driven by criteria you set up beforehand, and it absolutely screens for quality.
And that brings us to the solution, our lifeline in that giant sea of data. It's called the Systematic Literature Review, or SLR for short. And believe me, this is the modern gold standard for making sense of all that existing research, and then building a solid case for what you want to do next.
So, what exactly is a systematic literature review? Well, a top researcher in this area, Arlene Fink, defines it as and these words are key, a systematic, explicit, comprehensive, and reproducible method. You gotta pay attention to those 4 words. This is not just about reading a bunch of articles. Nope. It's a formal scientific process for mapping out and truly understanding the entire landscape of research on a given topic.
The entire credibility of an SLR, the whole thing, rests on these 4 pillars. So let's break them down. First, systematic. That just means you have a plan, a logical path, and you actually stick to it. No winging it. Second, explicit. This means you're totally transparent about your methods. You show all your work, no secret ingredients. Third, comprehensive. This is huge. It means you aren't just cherry-picking the studies that already support your idea. You're trying to find everything on the topic, even stuff that hasn't been officially published. And finally, the ultimate test, reproducible. This means another researcher could take your methods, your recipe basically, follow it exactly, and end up with the same set of articles. That is scientific rigor.
Okay, so that's the what and the why. But how do we actually do it? To build a proper SLR, you can't just type a question into a search engine and hope for the best. No way. You have to learn to speak the language of these huge research databases. You've got to learn to search with logic.
See, these databases, the ones holding millions and millions of studies, they don't understand normal questions like we do. They're not Siri or Alexa. They speak a language of pure, cold logic. So to find what you really need, you have to use a set of simple but incredibly powerful tools. And these are called Boolean operators.
First up, we've got AND. Think of this as your focus tool, your laser beam. It narrows your search down. When you use AND, you're telling the database, hey, I only want articles that have all of these terms in them. So if you search for common cold and antibiotics, you'll only get results that mention both. It filters out everything else. It's super useful for zeroing in on a very specific overlap between topics.
All right, next we have OR. If AND is your laser beam, OR is your giant fishing net. It expands your search. Let's say you're looking for research on treatments for the common cold. You might search for zinc or vitamin C. This tells the database, bring me anything that mentions zinc and also bring me anything that mentions vitamin C. It ensures you don't miss important papers just because they use a slightly different term or a related idea.
And finally, there's NOT. This is your bouncer, your filter. It kicks out all the stuff you don't want. Let's say you're studying how antibiotics work in adults. You could search for antibiotics, not children. Boom. The database will remove all the studies about pediatrics. It's an incredibly powerful way to clean up your search results and save yourself a massive amount of time.
Okay, now we get to the part where the real magic happens. I mean, using all that Boolean logic, that's great for helping you collect the right articles. But the goal here isn't just to make a giant pile of papers on your desk. The real goal is to move beyond just summarizing them and get to true synthesis.
So what's the real end game here? I'll tell you what it's not. It's not about writing a report that just says, well, study A found this, and then study B found that. That's a summary. Now, the goal is to take all these individual puzzle pieces you've collected and actually put them together to see the whole picture. You're looking for the patterns. You're asking, where do these studies disagree? And maybe most importantly of all, what's missing? What piece of the puzzle isn't there? And the number one tool for this job is something called the synthesis matrix. It sounds complicated, but it's brilliant. Instead of just reading papers one after another, a matrix lets you lay them all out and compare them side by side. So, for example, let's say you're a civil engineer looking at new types of concrete. Your matrix might have columns like admixture type, test method, strength gain, and as you fill it out, laying it all out visually, you might suddenly see it. Wow! Dozens of studies cover short-term strength, but almost none of them have tested durability past 5 years. And right there, that's it. That's the gap in the research. That's your project. That might even be your whole PhD. This is how the matrix makes those patterns, those contradictions, and especially those gaps just pop.
You see, all of this, the searching, the filtering, the matrix, it all builds to this one ultimate goal. Once you've done that synthesis, once you've seen the big picture, you are no longer just a passive reader of other people's research. You are now in the perfect position to build a powerful, evidence-based argument for your own work.
And a really high-value synthesis does 4 incredibly important things for you. Number 1, it gives you an accurate map of what the world currently knows about your topic. Number 2, and this is the big one, it justifies why your new research is needed by pointing directly to what is not known. Number 3, it can help you figure out why some studies might have conflicting results. And number 4, it lets you stand back and evaluate the overall quality of all the research that's out there.
So, let's be crystal clear. This is not just some boring academic exercise. This rigorous process is what convinces a committee to give you funding for your project. It's what earns you that master's degree or that PhD. And out in the real world, in professions from medicine to engineering, this is what guides best practices. A great systematic literature review proves with cold, hard evidence why your research isn't just interesting, it's absolutely necessary.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe most important takeaway. Mastering the systematic literature review, it does so much more than just help you write a good paper. I love how the source material puts it. By following this systematic process, a researcher is transformed from a passive reader into an authoritative voice. Think about that. You're no longer just reporting on the conversation happening in your field, you are now fully equipped to lead it.